Good day. Welcome to the 2019 CTA Level 1 Test 1 Manfin Revision video. The presenter is Mutsawa Shembaiwa, and today I'm going to specifically revise with you Required B. So Required B wanted you to write a memo to the Board of Directors of Newtown in which you discuss the key business risks faced by the microfinance business unit only and provide actions that should have been taken by management to mitigate these risks, giving us a total of 20 marks. And for this required communication skills, that is clarity of expression and presentation, was 3 marks. Now, let's first of all discuss how do we write a memo. So, a memo format. What does a memo format look like? There's supposed to be to, which is to the Board of Directors. From whom? From the CTA student. Now, avoid writing your name in any exam that you are going to write. Avoid writing your name. So it's always from the CTA student unless you've been given a specific role. For example, you are told you are the finance manager, you are told you are the supervisor. So you need to write from the supervisor to Board of Directors of Newtown, and there needs to be a date, which is the date. So in this case, I will give maybe 26 March 2019, and then there needs to be a subject, or what is known as the reference. What are you going to be discussing in this specific memo? So my reference would be a discussion of the key business risks that the microfinance is facing. So this is your memo format. So if you had written to, from, and you missed any of the 4 quadrants making up the memo format, you lost a full mark. So this memo format was leading towards the communication mark. So a memo format in itself was awarded 1 mark. So for a student who also had the correct memo format but wrote their name on the script, they were awarded no mark. The communication mark was removed due to writing your name. Now let's discuss, besides the memo format, what were you supposed to discuss? You were supposed to identify key business risks faced by the microfinance business unit only. So going back to our scenario, we've been given a lot of information from the operating environment right through to growth of the microfinance business unit. So this is the specific section that we wanted, or where we are going to obtain our information from, right up to this space. So using the information there, we were supposed to identify key business risks. Now, what are these key business risks? Key business risks. What is even a business risk? So a business risk is any risk that might hinder the success of an entity. So it can hinder in terms of the operations. So as long as an entity is unable to make or to serve their mandate as an entity that forms an example of a business risk. Now, how do we identify these business risks? So in identifying these key business risks, we needed to use specific tools for risk identification. So in line with this, what specific tool could we have used? So we could have used, as an example, for risk identification, going back to your enterprise risk management. So I'm sure you remember notes being uploaded with regards to this topic. So in line with this, if you go back to your enterprise risk management notes, there's a stage 5 which is written risk management process tools. So from there, you needed to identify tools to use. So in this case, to identify key business risks, as tools, you could identify using SWOT analysis. You could identify using what is known as process analysis. You could identify using what is known as PESTEL. And you could have also identified using scenario analysis. Going to also discuss further, you could have used the quadrants of the enterprise risk management, which further divide or classify risks into strategic, operational, regulatory, and financial risks. Now, these were the tools that we were supposed to use to identify risks. So, as all other sections from the scenario were specifically scoped out, we needed to identify from this specific section what the key business risks of the microfinance business unit could be. So as you are going to read through, we are going to come through some sort of information. Now in answering this required, you are applying these tools to the specific information you've been given. So you are using triggers from the scenario. So to answer, you are supposed to identify where in the specific scenario you are getting your point from. If you are getting your point from this quadrant, you are in the right path. Now, you identify your trigger. For example, my specific trigger could be a few instances were identified where the online software used to keep the record of the loans failed to back up, resulting in loss of important information on clients. Now, I have identified my trigger. That is my trigger, where I'm going to obtain my information or my risk from. Now, in line with that, how is it going to affect my business? So, it is always, when you're explaining, it is always trigger plus explanation. Trigger plus explanation. So on the explanation part, you needed to expand how lack of backing up was going to affect the operations of Newtown, specifically the microfinance business unit. So, for example, the lack of the backup of the online software that keeps the record of loans might lead to loss of information, as was given in the scenario, which might understate the balances and installments supposed to be paid by clients, which might result in a loss to Newtown. So, for example, if my balance has been understated by the system, as a client, I will pay less than what I was supposed to pay, meaning I might have a loss to Newtown. This is to the extent of the risk. And also, expanding on the same trigger, the lack of backup might lead to loss of important information, which might result in reputational damage. So I have identified my trigger and I have explained. Now this other section of the required wanted you to now provide actions that should be taken by management. So for every risk, there should be a mitigatory action. Now, in line with this, your presentation would be better if you had used a table format. So a table format would allow you to match your specific risk, that is the trigger plus an explanation, as well as the mitigatory action to attain your 2 marks. So for students who identified the correct presentation format, that is the table format, a mark was awarded for communication skills, that is the presentation part section. So presentation had 2 marks, the memo format and the table format. So what you wrote, or the content or the quality of the content that you wrote, was now being measured, and that is where the clarity of expression mark comes from. So for a student who managed to identify the trigger plus explanation and correctly match most of the risks to the mitigatory actions, that student was awarded the clarity of expression mark. Now, we have identified what a memo is, where you are going to obtain the key business risks from, using tools from the enterprise risk management to identify triggers from the scenario. After you've identified your triggers, you now match your trigger and your explanation to come up with your what? With your risk. And for every risk, there should be a mitigatory action which made you, or which was supposed to attain, to make you earn the clarity of expression mark. So that was all you were required to do under this specific required. Write a memo. Your specific section or scope was supposed to be from the microfinance business unit only. So if you suggested any other business risks faced by, for example, the retailing section or the manufacturing section, no marks were awarded. So if you have any further questions after you've gone through this video with regards to specifically required B, please come through and we'll discuss further. Thank you for taking your time to go through this video.